My name is Effie, and I am 58 years old. This morning, I sat at my kitchen table in the house I have lived in for 32 years, looking at my daughter-in-law, who is 7 months pregnant. She smiled at me sweet as honey and said, "Effie, I think it's time you found your own place. The baby needs peace and quiet." I felt my heart stop, but I smiled back calmly and replied, "Honey, this is my house." You should have seen her face go pale. Before I tell you how we got here, I would love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever dealt with someone trying to push you out of your own space, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear how this all played out, because trust me, you will not believe where this story goes. I have lived in a 4-bedroom ranch-style house in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, for over 3 decades. My husband passed away 11 years ago from a heart condition that took him too quickly, too soon. I was left to raise our son Marcus on my own when he was just 17 years old. Those years were not easy. I worked 2 jobs to keep the mortgage paid and food on the table. Marcus was everything to me. He was a good kid, respectful, hard-working, and he grew into a fine young man. 3 years ago, when Marcus turned 30, he was working as a software engineer at a tech company downtown. He met a woman named Brielle at a networking event. She was 27 at the time, worked in marketing coordination, and was absolutely beautiful. She had long, dark hair, perfect makeup, and a way of speaking that made everyone lean in to listen. Marcus brought her home to meet me after they had been dating for 3 months. I remember that first meeting clearly. Brielle arrived with a bouquet of yellow tulips, my favorite flower, though I had never mentioned it to Marcus. She complimented my home, said how cozy and welcoming it felt. I felt warmth spread through my chest. I thought my son had found someone truly special. 1 year later, Marcus and Brielle got married at a small venue right on the coast. It was intimate, about 50 guests, mostly close friends and family. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt water, and I watched my son say his vows with tears in my eyes. I was so proud of him, so happy to see him building his own life. After their honeymoon in Hawaii, Marcus came to me with a request. "Mom, would you mind if Brielle and I stayed here for a while? Just until we save up for a down payment on our own place." I agreed immediately. Of course I did. This house had 4 bedrooms and plenty of space. I thought it would be wonderful to get to know my new daughter-in-law, better to have family around me again. The first few months went smoothly. Brielle was polite and occasionally helped me cook dinner. We all watched movies together on Saturday nights, bowls of popcorn balanced on our laps. I felt like I had gained a daughter, not just a daughter-in-law. The house felt alive again with laughter and conversation. But then around the 4-month mark, I started noticing small changes. Brielle would make little comments here and there. "Effie, do you always leave the kitchen light on at night? It is so bright." Or, "The TV volume is a bit loud, don't you think?" I brushed these off. I figured she was just adjusting to living with someone else trying to find her comfort level. I turned off the kitchen light and lowered the TV volume. Small compromises, I told myself. 6 months after their wedding, Brielle started suggesting changes to the house itself. One afternoon, she walked into the living room where I was reading and said, "Effie, this living room could use some updating. Those curtains are so outdated." I looked at the beige curtains I had hung in 2005. They were a bit faded, I supposed. Maybe she is right, I thought. So I agreed to replace them. Brielle picked out pale grey curtains that made the room feel cooler, less warm. Then she wanted to replace the furniture. "That couch is too bulky. We need something modern," she said. I hesitated. The couch had been a gift from my late husband. But Marcus said, "Mom, she is just trying to make the place nice for all of us." So I let it go. Then Brielle started locking the bedroom door during the day. When I asked if everything was okay, she replied, "We need our privacy, Effie. You understand, right?" She made it clear she did not want me entering their room even to clean. I felt like I was being pushed to the edges of my own home, but I tried to be understanding. After all, newlyweds need their space. 1 year after their wedding, Marcus came home from work with news that made my heart soar. "Mom, we are having a baby," he announced. I threw my arms around him. "I'm going to be a grandmother. This is wonderful." I imagined holding a tiny baby, reading bedtime stories, baking cookies together when the child got older. I thought this baby would bring our family even closer together. But almost immediately after Brielle announced her pregnancy, her behavior changed dramatically. The requests and complaints multiplied. "Effie, can you not use the blender in the morning? It makes me nauseous. Your perfume is too strong. I cannot handle it. Can you eat dinner in your room? The smell of your food bothers me." Every day brought a new restriction. Marcus would say, "Mom, she is pregnant. Hormones are tough. Just try to be patient." So I stopped making my morning smoothies. I stopped wearing the lavender perfume my husband used to love. I started eating dinner alone in my bedroom, balancing a plate on my lap while watching a small TV. I felt like a guest in my own home, walking on eggshells, afraid to do anything that might upset Brielle. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Once the baby arrived, things would settle down. Brielle would be too busy with the baby to worry about me. We would all adjust. But deep down, a knot of anxiety grew tighter in my stomach every day. I came home from my part-time job at the library 3 days a week, and I never knew what complaint would be waiting for me. The unpredictability wore me down. Still, I held my tongue. I wanted to support my son and his growing family. By the time Brielle reached her 5th month of pregnancy, she had quit her job to stay home. I was still working my part-time hours at the library. Every time I came home, I found Brielle on the sofa, watching television, dirty dishes piled in the sink. I cleaned them without saying a word. I told myself she was growing a human being and needed rest. But the requests became more and more unreasonable. "Effie, can you stop vacuuming? The noise stresses me out. Don't open the windows. The breeze makes me cold." Can you park your car on the street? I need the driveway closer to the door. Marcus continued to tell me to be patient. Just bear with us, Mom. She is carrying our baby. So I stopped vacuuming when Brielle was home. I kept the windows shut, even on beautiful spring days when I longed for fresh air. I parked my car on the street, even during rainstorms, so Brielle could have the driveway spot. I felt like a tenant paying rent, except I was not even paying rent. This was my house. My name was on the deed. And yet, I felt like I had no rights at all. One afternoon, I met my best friend Dorothy for coffee at our favorite cafe downtown. Dorothy is 62, widowed like me, and we have known each other for almost 20 years. How is life with the newlyweds? She asked, stirring cream into her coffee. I told her everything. The restrictions, the demands, the feeling of being pushed out. Dorothy frowned deeply. Effie, that is your house. You should not have to walk on eggshells. I tried to defend Brielle. She is pregnant, Dorothy. I want to be supportive. Dorothy shook her head. There is being supportive, and there is being a doormat. You need to set some boundaries before this gets worse. But I did not. Listen. I went home and continued my pattern of accommodation. Marcus himself was changing too. He talked to me less and less. He used to come home from work and tell me about his day, but now he went straight upstairs to be with Brielle. When I tried to engage him in conversation, he gave short answers. How was work, honey? I would ask. Fine, Mom, he would reply, then disappear. I felt like I was losing my son piece by piece. By the 7th month of Brielle's pregnancy, her belly was large and prominent. She asked me to rearrange the living room to make space for a temporary bassinet. I agreed, of course. I moved furniture, including the armchair that had been my late husband's favorite spot. That chair held so many memories. He used to sit there every evening reading the newspaper, his reading glasses perched on his nose. I carried it down to the basement, with tears in my eyes, but I did not complain. I told myself it was just temporary. After the baby came and they moved out, I would bring the chair back up. But the stress was taking a toll on me. I started having trouble sleeping. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had become this. I felt anxious every time I walked through my own front door. I started asking myself if this was what the rest of my life would look like. Would I spend my remaining years tiptoeing around my own home, afraid to make noise, afraid to take up space? Still, I clung to hope. I kept thinking, once baby Henry arrived, Brielle would calm down. She would be focused on the baby, not on me. Things would improve. They had to. Then came the Saturday morning that changed everything. I was standing in the kitchen, pouring myself a cup of coffee. The morning sun streamed through the window, warming the counter. I heard footsteps on the stairs and turned to see Brielle descending slowly, one hand on the railing, the other resting on her 7-month pregnant belly. But her face did not hold the soft, tired expression of an expectant mother. Instead, she looked determined, almost cold. Her lips were pressed into a thin line. Effie, "We need to talk," she said, her voice cutting through the peaceful morning air. I set down the coffee pot. "Of course. Is everything all right?" Brielle walked to the kitchen table and sat down heavily. She folded her hands on top of her belly and looked directly at me. "I have been thinking. This house is not big enough for all of us." I felt confusion wash over me. "What do you mean? We have 4 bedrooms." Brielle shook her head. "It is not about the physical space. It is about peace and quiet. With the baby coming, Marcus and I need room to breathe, room to be a family." I still did not understand where she was going with this. "Of course, I will try to be even quieter. I will stay out of your way as much as possible." Brielle looked at me with something like pity, mixed with impatience. "No, you do not understand. I think it is time you found your own place." The words hit me like a physical blow. I could not breathe. "Excuse me?" I whispered. Brielle leaned back in her chair, her voice taking on that sugary, sweet tone that made my skin crawl. "Don't take it personally. It is just that new mothers need their space. And you are here all the time. It would be better for everyone if you had your own apartment." I gripped the edge of the counter. "Brielle, I live here." She waved her hand dismissively. "I know, but Marcus and I talked about it. We think it is best for everyone, best for the baby." My vision blurred. Had I heard her correctly? Was she actually asking me to leave my own house? At that moment, Marcus appeared at the bottom of the stairs. He must have heard part of the conversation. I turned to him desperate. "Marcus, did you agree to this? My son, my only child, the boy I raised alone, looked at the floor. He could not meet my eyes. "Mom, we just think maybe it would be easier if—" His voice trailed off. My heart shattered. Marcus had agreed to this. He was willing to let his wife push his own mother out of her home. Brielle continued talking, her confidence growing. "We looked at some nice senior apartments nearby. 1-bedroom places, very affordable on a fixed income." I stared at her. "Senior apartments?" She smiled, and it was not kind. "Well, you are almost 60, Effie. It might be time to downsize anyway. These places have activities, meal plans. You might even enjoy it." I looked at this woman, this person I had welcomed into my home, who was now trying to take it from me. She was sitting at my kitchen table with her hand on her belly and a smirk on her face, as if she had already won. As if this was a done deal. I looked at Marcus, who still would not look at me. And something inside me snapped. Not in an angry, explosive way, but in a clear, crystalline moment of absolute clarity. I thought about the 32 years I had lived in this house. I thought about my husband, who died too young, leaving me to raise Marcus alone. I thought about the nights I stayed awake when Marcus had a fever, holding a cool cloth to his forehead. I thought about working 2 jobs, skipping meals, so Marcus could have new shoes for school. I thought about every mortgage payment, every repair, every coat of paint on these walls. This house was not just a building. It was my life, my history, my home. And I would be damned if I was going to let anyone take it from me. I set my coffee cup down carefully. I stood up straight, pulling my shoulders back. I looked directly at Brielle, meeting her smug gaze. My voice came out calm, steady, and absolutely firm. Honey, this is my house. The smirk vanished from Brielle's face like smoke. Her mouth opened slightly. What? I repeated myself, slower this time. This is my house. My name is on the deed. I have lived here for 32 years. I paid for this house with my own money, my own sweat, my own sacrifice. If anyone is moving out, it will not be me. Brielle sat frozen in her chair, her face pale. But Marcus said. She turned to Marcus, betrayal flashing in her eyes. You said your mom would understand. You said she would want to help us. Marcus looked miserable, caught between his wife and his mother. I said we would talk to her about it. I thought maybe she would be open to the idea. I turned to my son, this man I had raised. Marcus, what exactly did you tell her? He finally met my eyes, and I saw shame there. Good. He should feel ashamed. I just said we would discuss it. I thought you might want a smaller place, something easier to maintain. I shook my head slowly. So you let her believe that you could convince me to leave my own home? Brielle's shock was turning to anger. This is unbelievable. After everything we have done. I raised an eyebrow. Everything you have done, please enlighten me. She gestured around wildly. We have been living here, helping with expenses. I almost laughed. Helping with expenses? You have been living here rent-free for almost 2 years. I have been the one paying the mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes. You have not contributed a single dollar. I took a breath and continued, my voice gaining strength. Let me tell you what I have done. I stopped using my blender because it bothered you. I stopped wearing my perfume. I eat dinner alone in my bedroom. I park on the street in the rain so you can have the driveway. I moved my late husband's favorite chair to the basement to make room for your baby's bassinet. I have bent over backward to accommodate you, Brielle. But asking me to leave my own home, that is where I draw the line. Brielle tried a different tactic. But Marcus and I need space. We need to feel like this is our home, not yours. I nodded. I understand that. And that is exactly why you and Marcus should start saving for your own home like you originally planned. Brielle's eyes widened. We cannot afford that right now. Do you know how expensive houses are? I crossed my arms. Then I suggest you both start budgeting. This house has 4 bedrooms. There is plenty of space for all of us. But it will be on my terms, not yours. Marcus finally spoke up, his voice pleading. Mom, please, Brielle is pregnant. This is really stressful for her. Something snapped inside me again. And what about me, Marcus? Have you thought for 1 second about how stressful this has been for me? He fell silent. I continued, my voice breaking slightly. I am your mother. I raised you alone after your father died. I worked 2 jobs to keep this house, so you would have stability, security. I sacrificed everything for you. And now, you are asking me to leave. The kitchen was silent, except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Brielle's eyes were filling with tears now. Whether real or manufactured, I could not tell. I cannot believe you are being so selfish. I am carrying your grandchild. I met her gaze steadily. And I am thrilled about that. I cannot wait to meet my grandchild, but being pregnant does not give you the right to kick me out of my own house. Brielle stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Fine, then Marcus and I will leave. She stormed toward the stairs, but I noticed she glanced back as if expecting me to call her back, to apologize, to back down. I did not. She continued up the stairs, and I heard the bedroom door slam. Marcus and I stood in the kitchen, facing each other across the table. The silence stretched between us. Finally, I spoke. Marcus, how could you agree to this? He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from his teenage years when he was stressed. Mom, I just want Brielle to be happy. She has been so stressed with the pregnancy. I shook my head. At my expense, you were willing to throw your own mother out to make your wife happy. He looked pained. I did not think you would mind that much. You are always so accommodating. Those words hit me hard. I had been too accommodating. I had taught my son that my needs did not matter, that I would always bend, always give way. That does not mean you can take advantage of me, I said quietly. Marcus slumped into a chair. I know. I am sorry. I should have stood up to her. But she kept saying the baby needed a calm environment, that having 3 generations in one house would be too chaotic. She made it sound so reasonable. I sat down across from him. Marcus, I need you to understand something. You and Brielle are welcome to stay here as long as you need to. But there will be changes. He looked up. What kind of changes? I took a deep breath. I will no longer be walking on eggshells in my own home. I will use the kitchen when I want to use it. I will park in my driveway. I will watch TV at a reasonable volume. I will live my life. If Brielle cannot accept that, then perhaps you two should find your own place, sooner rather than later. Marcus looked at me for a long moment, really looked at me perhaps for the first time in months. You are right, he said finally. We have been treating you like a guest in your own home. That was wrong. He stood up and came around the table. He put his hand on my shoulder. I am sorry, Mom. Really sorry. I covered his hand with mine. I know you are, but sorry is not enough. You need to think about what kind of man you want to be. The kind who stands up for what is right, even when it is hard. Or the kind who lets others push people around, even his own mother. He nodded slowly. I will talk to Brielle. I will make things right. I squeezed his hand. You do that. He went upstairs and I sat alone in my kitchen, my coffee now cold. But for the first time in months, I felt lighter. I had stood my ground. I had reclaimed my voice, my space, my home. The next 3 days were tense. Brielle did not speak to me at all. She ate meals in her bedroom, came downstairs only when necessary. Marcus looked stressed and tired. I heard raised voices from their bedroom a few times, though I could not make out the words. I continued with my normal routine, refusing to tiptoe anymore. I made my smoothies in the morning. I parked in my driveway. I watched TV in the living room at a normal volume. On the 3rd evening, Marcus knocked on my bedroom door. Mom, can we talk? I set down my book. Of course, honey. He came in and sat on the edge of my bed. He looked like he had aged 5 years in 3 days. I have been doing a lot of thinking, he began. And, I prompted. He took a deep breath. You were right about everything. I have been letting Brielle control our lives. I did not realize how much you have sacrificed, how much you have given up. I waited for him to continue. Brielle has been pushing me to ask you to leave for weeks. I kept saying no, but she wore me down. She said if you stayed, she would not feel comfortable raising the baby here. She said she needed to be the woman of the house. Understanding dawned on me. Brielle had not just wanted space, she had wanted my house. She had wanted to push me out so she could take over, completely erasing any reminder that this was my home first. Marcus continued. I told Brielle this morning that we are moving out. I was shocked. What? He nodded. We found a 2-bedroom apartment about 3 miles from here. It is smaller than we wanted, but it is ours. We can afford it if we budget carefully. I realized we need our own space, not your space. Our own. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of pride. My son had finally stood up, had finally made the right choice. Marcus, I am proud of you. He smiled weakly. It was not easy. Brielle was furious at first, but I told her this is not negotiable. We will not disrespect you anymore. If she cannot live here on your terms, then we need to leave. I reached out and hugged him. You can stay as long as you need to. I meant that. He hugged me back. I know, Mom, but I think this is the right move. We need to be independent. And honestly, I think Brielle and I need to work on our marriage without you in the middle. Not because you have done anything wrong, but because we need to figure out how to be partners, how to respect each other's families. Brielle did not seem happy about the move, but she accepted it. I think she realized her plan had backfired. Or perhaps Marcus had finally set boundaries with her the way he should have from the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, they packed their belongings. I helped when they would let me boxing up kitchen items, folding clothes. There was no anger in me, only relief and a strange sense of peace. On moving day, Marcus hugged me tight in the driveway. Thank you for standing your ground, Mom. I needed that wake-up call. I smoothed his hair back the way I used to when he was a little boy. I love you, Marcus. I will always be here for you, but not as a doormat, as your mother who deserves respect. He nodded. I understand now. I really do. Even Brielle gave me a stiff hug. Thank you for letting us stay as long as you did, she said quietly. There was no warmth in her voice, but there was a grudging respect. She had learned that I was not someone to be pushed around. After they left, I walked through my house slowly. It felt bigger, emptier, but also lighter. I went down to the basement and brought my husband's armchair back upstairs. I placed it in its old spot by the window. I sat down in it and looked out at the front yard. The maple tree we planted 25 years ago swayed in the breeze. I felt my husband's presence, as if he was proud of me too. 2 months later, Brielle gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Henry. Marcus called me from the hospital, his voice filled with joy and exhaustion. Mom, he is perfect. Absolutely perfect. I drove to the hospital and held my grandson for the first time. He was tiny, red-faced, with a shock of dark hair. My heart melted completely. Brielle watched me from her hospital bed. "Thank you for letting us stay as long as you did," she said again, and this time there was sincerity in her voice. I nodded. "You are family, but boundaries matter," she nodded back. "I understand that now." Now, months later, I sit in my living room in my husband's old armchair. The house is quiet, but it is a peaceful quiet, not the tense silence that used to fill these rooms. I see Marcus and Brielle regularly. They bring Henry over for visits. We have dinner together sometimes. But at the end of the night, they go home to their apartment, and I stay here in my house. Our relationship is better now, built on mutual respect instead of resentment. I have learned so much from this experience. I learned that love does not mean letting people walk all over you. Supporting your family does not require sacrificing your own happiness, your own peace, your own home. There is a difference between being kind and being a doormat. Setting boundaries is not selfish, it is self-respect. I also learned that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is not giving them what they want, but teaching them what they need to learn. Marcus needed to learn that marriage does not mean abandoning your parents, that you can love your spouse and still respect your mother. Brielle needed to learn that you cannot manipulate people into giving up what is rightfully theirs. And I needed to learn that my needs matter too. I look at Henry's photos on my phone. He is 6 months old now, smiling and chubby-cheeked. I am building a relationship with my grandson, built on healthy family dynamics. I see him regularly, but I do not live with him. I am grandma, not a tenant in his parents' home. When Marcus brought Henry over last week, he looked around my living room and said, "I am glad you brought Dad's chair back up. It looks right there." I smiled. It does, doesn't it? Dorothy comes over for coffee now, and we sit in my kitchen without anyone complaining about the noise. I have started a small garden in the backyard, something I could not do before because Brielle thought it made the yard look messy. I planted tomatoes and basil and lavender. The lavender reminds me of my perfume, the one I can wear again now. I have rejoined my book club at the library. I go to movies with friends. I live my life fully without apology. Sometimes I think about that Saturday morning when Brielle told me to leave. I think about the smirk on her face, the assumption that I would just roll over and comply. I think about the moment I stood up and said, "This is my house." That moment changed everything, not just for me, but for Marcus and Brielle too. It forced all of us to reconsider our relationships, our boundaries, our respect for one another. I walk through my house now, and I feel at home again. Not like a visitor, not like someone who has to ask permission to exist. This is my space. I earned it. I paid for it. I raised my son here, and I stood my ground to keep it. The house still creaks in the same places. The floorboard near the bathroom still squeaks. The kitchen faucet still drips slightly if you do not turn it tight enough. But these imperfections are mine. This home is mine. I think about my grandson growing up. I will tell him stories about his grandfather one day, about the man who planted the maple tree in the front yard. I will bake cookies with him in this kitchen. I will read him books in this living room. But I will do it all from a place of strength, not desperation. He will know his grandmother as someone who loved fiercely, but also respected herself. That is the legacy I want to leave. As I look out the window at the maple tree my husband planted 30 years ago, I think about roots. That tree has deep roots that have kept it standing through storms and winds. I have roots too in this house, in this life I built. And those roots are strong enough to weather any storm. I stood firm when someone tried to uproot me, and I am still standing. Sometimes the greatest act of love is teaching others where your boundaries lie. Because when you stand firm in who you are and what you deserve, you not only honor yourself, you teach the people around you how to honor you too. And that, I have learned, is the foundation of every real, lasting relationship. My house is still standing, and so am I. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in your own home? Have you dealt with family members who did not respect your boundaries? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up, speaking out, and finding your strength. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you deserve respect, especially in your own home. May you always have the courage to stand your ground when it matters most. Take care, and remember, your home should be your sanctuary, not your prison.